I was born in Zimbabwe. The first 4 years of my life I spent there, and then we moved to South Africa. My family was already a Scientology family, my mother and my father, and the way I was brought up already, taking responsibility and holding your hat as a child. I was told that a child's hat is to keep their bedroom tidy, to make their breakfast, to make sure their parents are happy, to learn at school, and to basically solve all the problems that they ever have, you know.
Does that strike you odd now that your job as a child is to make your parents happy?
Yes, very. I think it's very unfair now because I wasn't given the privileges of a normal childhood, just be a child and, you know, just have your own freedom and be free to learn and make your own mistakes. But because you have to just take all your responsibility for yourself and the people around you as well. I did the communication course for children. There were always problems between my stepmother and myself, so my dad said a course in the org might help.
At the age of 5?
Yeah.
What type of communication course is that for a 5-year-old?
Well, I don't really remember the whole course, but I just remember doing word clearing and using little blocks of wood and making sentences. I didn't enjoy it, but I enjoyed going home and having my parents be so proud of me and happy with me. So I was happy to do it because it made them happy.
Did you grow up in a Scientology school, or did you go to public school?
No, always to public schools. I don't even think there were Scientology schools in South Africa when I was there. It was very new then. I joined the SIOG when I just turned 16. One day my dad came into my room and said, this was after my parents had divorced, that his girlfriend didn't want me to stay with them. So he said I must move out. So I said, well, where to? So at first I did a bit of babysitting for Scientologists, and in return I could stay with them, and that went on for about 2 weeks. And then a friend of mine said, you know, I want you to meet some people, and there were recruiters from Flag and Denmark and England, and they told me about the SIOG, and my dad said, yeah, join the SIOG because, you know, there you have a place to stay, you have food to eat.
So you were in essence forced into the SIOG?
Yeah.
Out of desperation?
Yeah. And I was happy that I had that opportunity, that I had any opportunity to take care of myself, because I didn't know what to do and where to go.
It sounded very sudden.
Very, yeah. But it also sounded good because it was a place that where everybody helped each other, everybody was ethical, they wanted to save the planet. It was wonderful. It was like having a family again after I had lost my family.
Is this what you were told, or is this what you found once you got there?
That's what I was told.
And what was the reality?
The reality was when I got there that, first of all, the very first thing that happened was I had to do a sec check. Then they took away all sorts of personal things like perfume products and books that they thought were inappropriate. I was told that all the friends I had who were non-Scientologists, I was not supposed to be in contact with them anymore. So it was a very controlled environment from the very first day, right from the very first hour.
So you're told not to communicate with any of your friends?
Well, those who were not in Scientology or who were maybe against Scientology.
And did you find that odd?
I found very odd, and I found very uncomfortable. I don't like to be controlled that way.
Did you try to contact any of your friends?
I still kept in contact with them, which was one of the reasons that I stayed on the EPF for so long, because I was always in ethics.
Explain the EPF to me.
Well, if you spell it out, it's the Estates Project Force. And they basically do physical work all over the base, from cleaning out sewage pipes to, we built a sauna when I was there, a little miniature castle from outside. I'm still proud of that. I mean, I built it. We were digging trenches all night, carrying cement sacks around that were 30 kilograms heavy.
And you were how old?
16.
And how long were these days?
The days were a minimum of 15 hours.
And was any of that time spent in schooling?
Well, 5 hours we were studying L. Ron Hubbard's books, his courses, his SEAL courses, And we had half an hour for dinner and half an hour for lunch. And if we ever wanted to go to the toilet, then we had to go with our buddy, and we had to double time too. It's a mixture between a walk and running. And we were not allowed to go anywhere alone. You had to always go with your buddy. And you were not allowed even 5 minutes break in between. And there was no difference between men or women. So I remember the one time I was supposed to carry one of these cement sacks, and one of the people who was in my group, one of the young men, said, no, he will take that. And then the in charge came over to us and said, no, she will take it. Because there's absolutely no difference between if you're a child or a grown-up or a man or a woman.
Did they explain why that was?
Yes, because what really counts is your Thetan, your spirit, not your body. Your body it's basically just, in the way.
So you may be 16 or you could be 10. Your Thetan is millions of years old.
But it doesn't even matter how old you are. The only thing that matters is that you can do anything, no matter how old you are or what sex you are.
Did you find that you could do anything?
No. I hurt myself so often on the EPF that I was always in ethics and always having accidents. I was bitten by a spider, my whole arm swelled up, and I wasn't allowed to go to a doctor, and just stuff like that. We were working with acids without any gloves or protection, and it got onto your skin, and your skin was eaten away, and it started getting infected.
Now, the EPF is different from the RPF, in that the RPF is punishment, right? So you have to make amends by being on the RPF. The EPF was just... Why were you on the EPF?
The EPF is there to prepare you for the Sea Org. It's there to make sure that you are even qualified to be in such a tough group like the Sea Org.
So you have to go through the EPF.
All the weak ones get filtered out in the EPF.
How many people didn't make it to the Sea Org?
Most of them did. Maybe 1 or 2 out of one group of 10 people, if that. Most of them, because the Sea Org needs people desperately, so they usually all make it, but some of them take longer. Like I took 3 months to do the EPF, where you're supposed to do it in 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And I was on it for 3 months because I was always having accidents.
What is the criteria for graduating from the EPF?
You have to have done all 5 courses, and you have to be able to confront MEST, which is matter, energy, space, and time, which basically is physical work, anything from, crawling around in sewage pipes to building saunas, digging trenches, sitting in dirt with like hundreds of spiders crawling all over, and I hate spiders. That's what you have to do. And the most important thing of all is that the EPF in charge has to say you've passed.
Yeah. Well, do you remember the courses for the EPF?
Well, there was Scientology Introduction to Ethics. There was the personal grooming course, which taught you how to clean your shoes, how to look after your Sea Org hat, your cap, keeping personal hygiene, nails, brushing your teeth, men keeping their hair short, not on a collar. I don't remember what all of them were called, but in the one course you also learned, maybe that was also personal grooming, about how to clean windows with newspaper, how to dust, not in circles. You have to take it from the one end to the other and then fold the cloth, stuff like that. So there's a rule for everything in the Sea Org.
Did you find any of this practical or more useful than any of the other cleaning methods you ever used?
No.
Did you find it was odd that everything was so regimented?
I found it very annoying that you had to, that these rules were put there, because it was like, everyone has to do everything the same way. You couldn't be an individual anymore. I've been cleaning and looking after a 500 family for years. I know how to dust. I have my own method to dust. Why am I going to dust like this now? And I didn't. That was just me.
That didn't hold you back, though, in graduating. It was
I didn't tell him that I wasn't going to dust like that. And when I had to do the practical, you had to do all sorts of practical things on these courses, then of course I dusted like I was told to dust, like I had learned to dust. Yeah. Right. But otherwise I did everything as I was always used to it. unless somebody was going to watch.
So you graduate, and now you're part of the Sea Org. And what was that like?
Well, at first I was very, very happy because being on the EPF was one of the most terrible things I ever went through. Just like the mess work, because working for a minimum of 15 hours a day, and that's the absolute minimum that we worked. We worked 3 days and 3 nights the whole time, constantly, digging trenches in the pouring rain, so bad that you had blisters on your hands. So when I finally graduated the EPF, I don't know, I thought I had gone to heaven because I got a clean uniform. I didn't have to walk around in old boots that I don't know how many other people had worn before, an overall. And I was welcomed very warmly into the Sea Org. So everybody was happy to see me, and they were proud of me, and my dad was proud, so I was very happy. I thought when you were a Sea Org member that you would, it would get easier. You wouldn't have to work so long or so hard. I didn't think that office work or not physical work could be so tiring. But the fact of the matter is that when you're in the Sea Org, you work longer than when you work on the EPF. You get up earlier at 7, and you work until 12, if you're lucky.
And you were still 16 at this point?
I had a very big problem with the control that they took over you, because they would do like personal hygiene checks where they would smell you if you had any body odor, and if you did, then people were called up to the front, in front of the whole of the Sea Org, and oh, this person has body odor, so very humiliating things like that. I used to chew my fingernails, and until one of the officers came up to me and also said in front of everyone, oh, that looks really bad, and humiliated me so badly that I never chewed my fingernails since then, which is probably not bad, but I mean, I should be allowed to choose whether I'm going to chew my fingernails or not. So.
What type of duties did you have in the Sea Org?
Well, I worked in HCO, and because we didn't have any, we had too little staff, so nobody had a specific post and just looked after that post. Everyone just took care of everything. From the mail that came in, it was opened, it was checked for any money, it was cross-read to see if any theta, any Contra Scientology was in, and then it was handed out.
So these were letters to people in the Sea Org?
Right.
Personal letters?
Personal letters. Everything was open. All the letters that went out, if we had specific people who were not working well, then we would check their letters, and otherwise we would spot check the letters, all letters. We would just spot check every day, take a handful of letters and check them. The phone calls, listen in on phone calls, coming in, incoming, incoming, outgoing. Spot check them, or if you had specific people who were not working well, who you were suspicious of, then you would always check their phone calls.
Did people know that their phone calls were being listened to?
No, nobody knew. Only HDR.
What was
the Hubbard Communications Office? Everything with communications. The fax machine was in HCO, and all the faxes that came in we read. All the faxes that went out we had to send, so we also read them. HCO, it's a closed area, and only the members of the communications office have keys, and otherwise nobody is allowed to set even one foot into the office.
But at the age of 16, you were part of this group
And my boss was a 13-year-old.
Your boss was 13?
Yeah. She was also one of my best friends while I was there. Her name's Lily. I think she's probably like 17, 18 now, maybe. Well, Lily was a fantastic boss because she was younger than, she was almost my age. I was 16, she was 13. We were both kids. So, we'd fall in love with people in the Sea Org, and we'd talk about it, and we'd have fun. And, we would be pissed off with people and talk about it, which you're not allowed to do either. Strictly forbidden. When I was unhappy, I would tell her, and she would, she would comfort me. And when she was unhappy, she would tell me, and I would comfort her. And we'd fool around a lot, while working, stuff like that. So she was, the best boss I could have wished for. But it was tough because she always had bags under her eyes, rings. She was always exhausted, and she was only 13, and it used to make me very unhappy to see her like that. And once a week, she used to go to school on a Sunday, the Scientology school.
Just once a week?
Yeah. And she would be so happy about going to school. She would get up in the morning and she would jump up and down, really jump up and down, oh, school, and we can play games and do sports and stuff. And I was the first time I've ever seen anyone in my life, just be so excited about going to school. It was just outrageous for me. But that was the only time where she was allowed to be a child, and she was a child. She didn't know anything about sex or about personal hygiene to do with, menstruation, stuff like that. I had to explain these things to her. Whereas when you go to school, and when I went to school in Germany with 11 and 12, they taught you these things in school automatically, but not in the Sea Org. And I think that the Sea Org does that on purpose, because when you're 13 and you're in the Sea Org and you go to school, if you're lucky, once a week, when are you ever going to, when are you ever going to come to get any kind of certificate? When are you going to graduate? Never. And they don't even teach the appropriate subjects in the school either. So it's well thought out, because then they don't have anywhere to go. Because her mother's in the Sea Org, so when she's, 20, what is she going to do if she leaves the Sea Org? What qualifications has she got? Nothing. I was fortunate that I hadn't finished high school when I joined the Sea Org, but just below high school, which in Germany you can do a lot with already, and I was good. So I knew whatever happens, I can do something. But most of the people don't, and the older you get, the harder it gets, and then you suddenly see it's hopeless.
Do you see that in a lot of the people that you knew in the Sea Org? They felt it was hopeless, that they felt the Sea Org was their only outlet?
What the Sea Org also does is they try to recruit a lot of people from, like Nigeria, people who are desperate to get out of their own country, who live under such terrible conditions that they would go anywhere, to get people, young people. They're concentrating a lot on teenagers and kids starting from 12 upwards.
How much were you paid in the Sea Org?
Well, when I joined the Sea Org, I was told that I was going to get £30 a week, which is, I don't know how many dollars. But in the whole time I was there, I think I got paid about maybe 12, 15 times, and usually it was only £6 or £3, once or twice £12, and once on Christmas I think I got £36.
How did they justify this?
Well, they didn't justify it. They told us it was our own fault, because if the org didn't do well and bring in enough money, well, then we just didn't get paid. Another thing which was really bad was the food. We used to eat baked beans and raw cabbage every single day.
Every day?
Yeah. Sometimes we'd eat it every single day because there was nothing else, because they just didn't have money. Or
every meal?
Yeah. Well, okay, breakfast you would have toast and porridge, oats. I remember stuff like, very seldom they would give you tea bags, and everybody would fight over the tea bags, and you would use them like 7 or 8 times. We never had milk, we never had sugar, and we never had fruit, except for whenever I think it's autumn. I don't know when apples are ripe and pears, because there's a lot of apple and pear trees in St. Hill. Then we could pick as much as we wanted, but otherwise we didn't get anything.
Amazing. You mentioned earlier about you and your friend talking about or falling in love with people in the Sea Org. Did you have any relationships with boys?
No, but there's no possible way you can have a relationship anyway, because you have to marry the person. You can't have a sexual relationship in the Sea Org unless you're married. And, it would have been stupid to marry somebody just because of sex. So, but a lot of kids marry. Yeah, kids as well. 16-year-olds get married because their parents say, okay, if their parents give their consent, then they can get married. A a lot of people went to this rehabilitation project for us, to the RPF, because they had sex and they weren't married, so they were punished for it. I never had any relationships. I mean, there were a few people I thought very nice. I left because I couldn't live with myself anymore for the way we were controlling people, the way when people left we had to get them back against their will.
Tell me about that. How would you do that?
Well, a lot of people would blow, as the Scientologists say, would leave without permission, and then we'd call everyone, all their relatives, friends. We'd call up airports, have contacts there, post offices, telecom, all that kind of stuff, and get the person back. Either we'd go there and they would be blackmailed with their ethics folder. In these ethics folders there would be very intimate things, in crime sometimes, theft, or, I mean, in the one case I know a man, and he had sex with he paid for sex with children, and when he blew, we got him back because we said, either you come back or we're going to use this against you. Or you would physically get somebody back. You would physically go to the house where they were, drag them into the car and take them back. Or you would just stop them physically from leaving the estate. The security guards.
So it wasn't you, it was the security guards?
Oh, no, I didn't do that. The security was responsible for that. I wouldn't have been strong enough to do that anyway.
Did anyone question, in the case of the man having sex with little boys, did anyone question that they should go to the authorities?
No.
So that crime was okay as long as he was in Scientology?
Well, that crime was okay as long as he paid for auditing. Because, auditing can, cure any diseases, any sicknesses, any mental illnesses, and make everything turn out right again.
So you knew that they were disclosing information from these folders. Did you feel comfortable in your auditing sessions telling your private thoughts?
Well, the thing with me was that I didn't have anything to tell. I didn't have any crimes to tell besides that I had stolen some money from my parents, like smaller amounts, to buy teenage magazines or go and get stuff.
There weren't private thoughts that you had that you were worried about?
No.
Let me ask you, did you ever have a negative thought about L. Ron Hubbard?
No, I didn't. Never. I had a lot of negative thoughts about other people. Because when I was in the Sea Org, I was convinced that L. Ron Hubbard had written the tech, and the tech was right, but that we were not using it correctly, or other people were not using it correctly. So
did you ever complain to people in the Sea Org or in the chain of command that you thought you were out tech?
Constantly. Always writing reports, and I was always getting into trouble. And eventually I started writing reports and making copies all the way up to RTC. With every single report that I wrote went to RTC. And I got into a lot of trouble for it, which is also out tech, off policy.
What type of trouble?
You'd get called into the office of some senior or some officer, and he would shout at you, humiliate you. He would put you on mess work, make you clean toilets, and all sorts of stuff like that.
So this was not officially the RPF, but they would force you to do
No, but you would regularly, I would anyway, because of reports, and if they considered I was out ethics, then that's what they would do. I was stopped by the security guards of HCO and dragged into one of the towers in the castle and locked in a room with some paper and a pen to write up my OWs, my overts and withholds. And then I was guarded permanently after that.
For how long?
Oh, about 2 weeks.
2 weeks? Were you allowed to come and go? Or?
No, well, not the first few days, but then I was allowed to sleep in my dorm, in my room, with the other girls, but there was somebody outside the door. You would get guarded onto the bus, off the bus. Weren't allowed to make any private phone calls outside. Was put on mess work, isolated, nobody spoke to me, which was really torture, so you gave up very quickly.
So even though you were in the dorm with the other girls, they couldn't talk to you?
No.
They wouldn't talk to you?
No.
There wasn't any of them that would whisper? Or...
No. Well, there was one girl who went through the same phase that I went through, who also wanted to leave, and we weren't allowed to tell each other, but we knew it. And then she was also put on messed work. We weren't allowed to work together, and we'd make comments when nobody was around, and nothing specific or nothing exact, but just so we knew about it. But that was the only girl who did that.
This lasted for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
Then I gave up. My will was broken, and I said I want to be a good SEAL member again. And I worked out a plan to leave, because I figured I wasn't going to be able to leave like this. So I went back onto my post and was working well, and my stats were up again. And after a few weeks, I suddenly said, oh, my dad is ill. And then a few weeks later, he was in hospital, and then it was getting worse and worse, but over a few weeks. And suddenly he was dying. And because I was working well and always, uptone, happy, helping here wherever I could, nobody suspected anything.
But your dad was fine the entire time?
He was fine, yeah.
And no one checked into that?
No. And then it came to the point where I had to do my leave of absence sec check, and I was petrified of that because, you can't lie to the e-meter, and you can't get around it. And I was so petrified, and I went into my first session, and I'm holding the cans, and I don't know what question she asked me, but I just remember that I panicked, and she said, what was that? And I was like, oh my God. And then in that same moment I thought, oh no, now I'm not going to be able to see my friends, and I was looking so forward to having time off. And then suddenly she said, okay, that's fine. And then I thought, wait a minute, if she asks me a question and I think about how happy I'm going to be, then it should work out, which is exactly what I did. And sometimes she would say, what was that? And I would go, oh, that was once when I came late to post, and that I talked badly about somebody, so little things. But most of the time I would just think about seeing my dad and seeing my sister and having time off, and that's how I got around the sec check. That's how I lied to the e-meter.
So you made it through, and were you able to leave immediately then? Or?
Yeah.
And did you go home to your dad?
First I went up to the north of England to my relatives, to my aunt, and she said to me as well, you shouldn't go back. She didn't want me to go back.
Your aunt wasn't involved?
No, only my dad from my family. And she said, well, sell your story to a newspaper, and then they should pay for you to go back home. And that's what I did. I got in contact with a journalist from a magazine. And I flew to Stuttgart, which is where my dad was staying. And I told my dad I'm happy in the Sea Org and I don't want to stay there. And, he said, no, you have to go back, you have to go back. So then I just left the subject. I didn't talk to him about it anymore. And while I was in Stuttgart, I flew from Stuttgart to Berlin to meet this journalist. And he introduced me to Ursula Caberta in Hamburg. He didn't tell me we were going to meet her. He just said we're going to see a specialist. And when we were outside her office, and he said, oh, yeah, now we're going to see Ursula Caberta, and I almost died of shock because I was so petrified of this woman, this monster, this enemy number one against Scientology. I was petrified. I really was petrified. And I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to die of a lung disease or something. I'd have an accident. Something terrible was going to happen. We went into her office, and I was very quiet and didn't really want to talk about anything. And then this journalist got up and said he wants to take pictures of me. And I didn't want him to take pictures, but I would never have said no. And then she said, no pictures, no pictures. And then I suddenly thought, okay, I can trust her because she was protecting my interests. And she knew exactly how I felt, which surprised me. And so from that moment on, I trusted her. I just trusted her automatically from then. And during this interview with this journalist, he suddenly asked me, do you have any proof for what you're saying? And I thought about it and I said, no. And he said, you don't have any documents, any pictures, nothing? And I said, no, well, not here, in England. And he said, oh, is there any way you can get hold of that? And I said, well, if I go back, sure, I can get hold of it, because they're not suspicious of anything yet. And Ursula said, no way you're going back, way too dangerous. And I said, well, I cannot do anything, I cannot prove anything. I mean, what's the use of that? So she was still against it. She said, definitely not. And I said, well, I have to prove it. And now I have the opportunity to still go back. And after a long discussion, and she gave me all telephone numbers of the offices, of embassies, then I flew back to England. And I got back to St. Hill, and everything was fine. They didn't suspect anything. And after 2 days, I didn't unpack my bag, and I gathered all the information I could, all the documents I had, all the photos I had. And then suddenly I got called into security because my bag hadn't been unpacked, and they thought this was very, very strange. And I was petrified, because I knew if I don't get out now, then I will never ever get out again. So what I did was I called Ursula, and she said, okay, she will call me back. And it took a bit of time, and while I was waiting for her, I called my dad to try one more time to see, because I was going to, for one last time, I was going to see if he would accept the fact that I don't want to be a SEAL member anymore. And he said, when you leave the SEAL, you're dead for me. Then I don't have a daughter anymore. And then I thought, well, that was the last chance I gave him, because if he had said, okay, that's fine, then I would have rooted out. I would have done the sec check and left. But because he said, if you leave the SEAL, then you're dead for me, I thought, well, fine. Then I may as well just go. And Ursula called back after about 20 minutes, half an hour maybe. And she said, is there any possible way that I can go to the nearest police station? And I thought about it, because the whole area, the whole estate is guarded with cameras. But there's one point behind the castle where there are no cameras, by the fountain where the taxis usually drive up and let out all the customers. So what I did was I ordered a taxi from HCO to behind the fountain, and I just got in. And the taxi just drove out the front gate and to the nearest police station, and they were waiting for me. And it took a while, and they looked after me really well, the English police. And they said, you know, there's a lot of strange things going on in St. Hill, and so many people are reported missing, and when we find these people, they don't want to have anything to do with St. Hill, and perfectly fine. And I said, yeah, a lot of things are going wrong there. And then one police officer took me to a certain point, and then we changed cars and changed police officers, so I got into another car with another policeman, and he drove me to the airport. And at the airport, all the police were waiting and standing at different points guarding me, and were there for my protection. And it had already been arranged with the German embassy, and the German embassy bought my ticket. And I was escorted by this policeman into the plane, and he spoke to the stewardesses and to the stewards and to the captain, and said that they have to take care of me. And then I flew to Hamburg, and on the way to Hamburg I thought that I was going to die, because I thought the plane was going to crash, because I had just committed a high crime. And I mean, it was terrible. It was really petrifying. And then I landed in Hamburg, and still alive. And Ursula was waiting for me. And she took me to friends of hers, where I stayed for the first few weeks, which was really, really good. They were like they had like adopted me as their daughter, so it helped a lot.
So what type of documents did you take out with you?
My statistics, stuff like that, all my commendations I took with, because now that's very useful, because now when they say, oh, we were going to fire her anyway, that's what they told the press here, and I'm like, well, this says something else, and I have here signatures from very high officers, so what are you saying? So and they had to admit, because the timetables that we were working as like Lily, everyone under 16, it's illegal if you're under 16 to work after 7 in the evening, and it's illegal to work more than 2 hours a day. and they had to admit everything, and they admitted everything. I lost my father because of Scientology, because he doesn't want to know me anymore, which means that I lost my family as well, my sister. I had to change my telephone number 7 times because I kept getting death threats, really sick phone calls. I changed my mobile number 3 times. The police gave me, they didn't register me anywhere, not even in my passport, which is a legal document where you actually have to have your address in, stuff like that. It's not in there. I was given a secret number, which was given to me from the police, which is not just a normal one, you know, where you say you don't want to be in the phone book. It was a special number from what is the equivalent here, it's in the US, which is here, well, they call it BKA, which is like the FBI. And that number they got as well. I don't know, letters in my letterbox, which were not stamped, which were not sent with the post. They were dropped off with death threats saying, you know, you must be careful you don't have an accident. Friends of mine being, who are pulled aside and people try and get information out of them. People, you know, threaten them. And just basically telling the whole world what a liar I am, because I lied about my dad being in hospital. You know, saying that, you know, that I'm a thief. Telling people that I'm crazy, that I'm not sane. Which really hurt me and made me very angry at the beginning. But now, I mean...
How long has it been since you've been out?
Almost 4 years now. And the first year I didn't really think about Scientology a lot, and in the past 3 years I have had to deal with a lot. Had a lot of problems with myself, very guilty conscience, low self-esteem. I need a lot of well, I need to hear from people that I'm okay, that I'm a good person, or that I do things well. Because since I've lost my dad, and since, you know, I've lost, you know, his, you know, well, acceptance, I seem to have lost the ability to just say to myself, you know, okay, you're fine, you know. So that's pretty tough. I have a lot of new friends, but I seem to have the problem that no matter how many friends I have, and no matter how many people tell me that I'm a good person or that I'm not bad, as long as I don't believe it myself, it doesn't work. And because of what I went through, and because of the thing that you can't trust people, and you're so skeptical, and you make yourself very lonely. I don't know. I don't know if after all I've done, I really deserve to be happy. Somehow I seem to think that when I'm unhappy, which I am most of the time, that it has to be like that because of what I've done. And I'm very scared of my dad dying one day. And dying the way the situation is now. Because I lost my mother when I was very young. And I'm so sorry about what I did in Scientology and how many lives I ruined, even though I knew it was wrong. Which is why I try to do this press work to make up for what I did.
You're helping a lot of people. And thank you.
Okay.